Of all PlayStation exclusive releases coming in 2021, some may be as highly anticipated as Ghost of Tsushima's upcoming major expansion, Iki Island. Considering it's an expansion and not a full game, that may come as a surprise. But it just goes to show how well received Ghost of Tsushima was in 2020, and how excited players are to revisit the game and see where the story goes next. Sucker Punch is capitalizing on that today with a brand new Iki Island story trailer. The trailer starts by setting up the core idea behind the Iki Island expansion for Ghost of Tsushima. The island of Iki has been taken control of by another tribe of Mongols. This tribe is led by a woman known as the Eagle, a shaman named Enksar Khatan. As Jean sails to Iki, a storm strands him, setting up a face-to-face encounter with the Eagle and an introduction to exactly what she's capable of. The second half of the trailer focuses on a brief introduction to the island of Iki and what awaits players in the new expansion. There are glimpses of new environments to explore, hints at some of Iki Island's story quests like a scene featuring fireworks and characters both new and returning. There's even a brief glimpse of some of the new armor that players will be able to acquire on Iki, which can be assumed to draw from the Japanese island's culture. According to a new description of the Ghost of Tsushima expansion, Iki stands in stark contrast to Tsushima. It's said to be a land of raiders and criminals still scarred from past battles and war. Samurai have also been absent from the land for some time, forcing the people of Iki Island to become self-reliant in an untamed, wild fashion. Suffice to say, saving Iki from the Mongols will take on a much different style of approach than on Tsushima. The trailer establishes Iki has been taken over by another Mongol group, led by Shaman Enksar Khatan, a powerful woman simply known as the Eagle. Sucker Punch goes on to state that ultimately, the Iki Island expansion will deliver the same kind of experience that players had with Ghost of Tsushima. It's an action-adventure game that adds new legends, locations, techniques, and quests for players to play through. However, Sucker Punch does say that Iki Island is thematically unique. It's described as a story of healing, addressing wounds from the past. The Ghost of Tsushima Iki Island expansion is planned to launch on August 20th. It'll be available as part of the Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, which can be purchased as an upgrade for PS4 for $19.99 or as a full PS5 release for $69.99. The biggest component of Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut is the new Iki Island. Said to be in stark contrast to Tsushima, Iki has been absent of any samurai, leaving its denizens to fend for themselves. The island is filled with criminals and raiders, with the land and its people scarred from war. However, there are pockets of beauty and serenity, as Sucker Punch confirms there will be a number of animal sanctuaries. Jean will be able to visit these locations and interact with local wildlife, which includes wild cats, deer, and even monkeys. Using his flute, Jean can calm and tame the creatures, before approaching for the all-important pets. The developers note that after the animals have been calmed, players can return to pet them as often as they want. Recently, however, someone have done some delving into the PlayStation Store and discovered that the new Sucker Punch title will be a 60 GB download. This is around 10 GB more than the original base game, which sat at 50 GB at launch. Considering that Ghost of Tsushima ended up at around 35 GB when installed, it is possible that the 60 GB size may come down. The 10 GB extra likely comes in large part due to Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut's Iki Island expansion, which, given the original game's propensity for creating unique aesthetic experiences for the player in different regions of the map, will likely come with new textures and assets that would take up some space. No doubt the addition of improved 3D audio and 4K resolution required some tweaking to the files as well. The Mongol invasion of Japan in 1274 didn't stop at Iki Island, which means there's more DLC locations Ghost of Tsushima could explore. 1 year on from the release of Ghost of Tsushima, love for the historically set open-world game continues to pour in from fans across the internet. With the release of the game's director's cut on the horizon for the PS5 and PS4 in August, all eyes remain focused on Sucker Punch Productions to see where the franchise goes next. Aside from a handful of fictional characters like Jin Sakai himself, the studio has remained largely faithful to the real-world events that occurred during the Mongol Empire's invasion of Japan during the 13th century. With Iki Island set to appear within Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, there's a timeline of events being followed that could point to future DLC, and even sequel locations. During the first Mongol invasion of Japan in 1274, the invading UN armada didn't actually succumb to an ultimate defeat on either of the Japanese islands of Tsushima or Iki. In reality, there was no Jin Sakai to stop the 1,000-strong fleet from continuing to progress eastwards, with little resistance, until it arrived at the island of Kyushu in November of the same year. Naturally, being the grand finale to the region's initial run-in with the Mongol Empire means it would be fitting for Ghost of Tsushima to wrap up here in some form of DLC epilogue. It's worth keeping in mind though that Kyushu is Japan's third-largest island, and subsequently dwarfs the tiny Tsushima by a considerable margin. In terms of development, it would be presumably unreasonable to assume Sucker Punch would create a full-scale map of the entire region for DLC. Thanks to the events that transpired during the attack, a more concentrated experience could be built around Hakata Bay. In the real world, the Mongol invasion of the island was concentrated almost exclusively to this landmark and the immediate surrounding region, which would justify that potential DLC map being similarly constrained. While significant narrative-wise, the events that transpired during the Battle of Bun-Ei on Hakata Bay would still fit quite nicely within a Ghost of Tsushima DLC epilogue. That's because the battle itself only lasted for a day or so, as the evenly sized 3,000-strong armies clashed in a chaotic skirmish that resulted in little progress being made on either side. In the meantime, roaming Mongols were also said to have scouted out the region, which would conveniently make for some interesting side missions. Ultimately though, the Mongol Empire was forced to retreat home following a dramatic storm that sank 200 ships and killed 13,500 soldiers. Both sides were understandably impacted by this briefest of meetings, on a level that could form an interesting through line to a potential sequel. Alternatively, the first battle of Hakata Bay and the island of Kyushu could also work well as a dramatic cold opening to any Ghost of Tsushima 2 that Sucker Punch might want to make. While there's no guarantee that a sequel will continue to feature the Mongols as the primary antagonists, there's more to the story of the invaders that the studio could explore. Following a 7-year interval, Kublai Khan's Mongol army returned to the region in 1281 during what would become aptly known as the Second Invasion of Japan. In a twist of ironic symmetry, that conflict was also ended by a legendary typhoon that would go on to form an important part of Japan's identity. Together, these events seem like two very conveniently established historical bookends, things that Sucker Punch will surely find hard to ignore. Picking up the action following the original Ghost of Tsushima as an older Jin Sakai, in a new setting, would also work well from a character arc stance following the former samurai's exile at the end of the first installment. A large aspect of the second invasion centered around the preparation that Japan undertook in anticipation of the returning Mongol Empire. It's therefore not too hard to imagine Jin traveling around the whole island of Kyushu whilst rallying people to the cause once more, considering the experiences he lived through in the first game. Several islands could theoretically comprise a bigger sandbox within the sequel, with Tsushima, Iki and Kyushu all featuring heavily in the Mongols' plans the second time around as well. While smaller locations like Shika and Hiroto Island could work as DLC for the original game, it makes more sense for these to be saved and incorporated into a grander playing space in a sequel. Even though the Mongol Empire invaded both of these tiny islands in 1274, their conversion into forts 7 years later would serve up some exciting stealth scenarios for the player to tackle. Overall, it still seems like an exciting addition to the game for fans of the original. While the Iki Island expansion will add more to Jin's story and surely be a major draw for those that wanted more out of the base game's plot, the improved FPS, 4K resolution, and addition of haptics, 3D audio and adaptive trigger features could be enough for a large number of fans to pick the game up. Moving forward, we have an update on Haven Studios, where Jade Raymond's new studio has not announced anything about its PS5 exclusive, but a new leak claims it will be an online service. Jade Raymond's new studio Haven Entertainment Studios has yet to officially announce what the game is working on, but the studio announced in March that it would be pairing with PlayStation to develop its debut title. While there is still little known about Haven's new PlayStation exclusive, a new report claims to have information that the game will be an online service title. Jade Raymond is perhaps best known for her work at Ubisoft, where she was a producer on the first two Assassin's Creed titles as well as a managing director of Far Cry 4. Raymond then went on to work at Google Stadia before founding Haven Entertainment Studios after Google Stadia closed two of its first-party studios. The reporting on Raymond's new title comes from Italian website multiplayer.it. The website claims that it received the information from a recruiter within the games industry that was hired by Haven Entertainment Studios to help the studio hire a developer with experience working on online service titles. Haven Entertainment Studios has already hired a lot of big-name developers in the past, including fellow Assassin's Creed producer Sebastian Puel as well as the series lead writer Corey May. The studio has also hired the likes of Matthew Leduc, who was the art director of the first two Watch Dogs titles, as well as Daniel Drapeau, the gameplay director of Shadow of the Tomb Raider. The leak is also seemingly supported by recent statements from Raymond that seem to indicate the developer's interest in creating an online service title. Raymond has recently discussed her opinion that the hit franchises of the future would be driven by fans rather than developers. She has talked at length about how she believes that future titles need to give players the power to creatively develop and drive the story with their choices, and actions have a tangible impact on the game and its canon. For example, she has pointed at successful live service games such as Grand Theft Auto Online and Rainbow Six Siege. It will be very interesting to see what Raymond's team at Haven Entertainment Studios ends up releasing. Online service games have become increasingly popular in recent years, with fans being willing to pour countless hours into their favorites. However, many have questioned just how many online service games the industry can support at once, since each title asks players to devote a lot of their time and resources to the game. Hopefully, Raymond's team will be able to develop a title that can carve out its own place in the market and give players an exciting new experience. The gaming industry is sometimes one of turbulence, as many contracts end and developers shift around some of the biggest names out there. Of course, there are some who manage to stick with a company like Assassin's Creed developer/publisher Ubisoft for so long that they become synonymous with a franchise. For example, when AC Valhalla narrative director Darby McDevitt announced his departure, it was quite the shock for many in the community. Ubisoft has lost a lot of high-profile Assassin's Creed names in recent years, with the latest being one from the very beginning. Raphael Lacoste, the art director of the franchise, announced today that he is leaving the company. After 8 Assassins, 16 years, Lacoste thanks Ubisoft for his time at the company. Based on his wording, it seems that Lacoste could just simply be looking for something new. That's not uncommon in the gaming industry, and it makes sense given the sheer amount of work Lacoste has put into the franchise. Lacoste has worked on several Assassin's Creed games, including the 2007 original Revelations, Black Flag, Origins, and Valhalla, also serving as the overall series art director since 2012. Now we have an update as he announces he will join Haven Studios of Jade Raymond, which is a great addition to the studio. Recently, a document at Ubisoft outlined concerns for employee retention, which among other factors, includes the company's continued misconduct allegations. Montreal itself is becoming a bit of a hot seat for competition too, meaning there's a lot of reasons for key talent to leave Ubisoft. According to Bloomberg, chief among these reasons are money, working from home issues, Canadian studios poaching talent, and the belief that Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot, as well as the company at large, has not been held accountable for the past year's allegations. Money and Montreal are big factors in this battle of attrition, of sorts, as increased competition offering higher wages is a big incentive for anyone in Montreal to consider a new studio. Obviously, a lot remains up in the air. Ubisoft is no small name by any means, and in the AC franchise particularly, a lot is riding on Assassin's Creed Infinity's evolving world with multiple settings. Anything can happen in the gaming industry, so it'll be interesting to see Lacoste's role in Haven, and what Ubisoft does to fix its reputation, and how much more of a hot seat Montreal becomes. Speaking of talents leaving studios, Dan Houser, the co-founder of Rockstar Games and one of the studio's creative forces behind the GTA and Red Dead games, may be back with a new outfit. Founding the company way back in 1998 with his brother Sam, Dan Houser was one of the biggest driving forces behind a lot of Rockstar Games creations. Helping to spearhead such enormously successful franchises, such as Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption, Houser surprisingly departed the company back in 2020 with his final day being March 11th. Now, nearly a little over a year later, it appears he may be making a return to game development. In a recent report, Houser has apparently registered a new gaming company, which could signify his re-entering the industry since leaving Rockstar Games. The source indicates that if this isn't a studio, then it could be a personal investment arm that still pertains to video games. It seems that the company, which is going by the name of Absurd Ventures and Games Ltd., has been registered since June 23, 2021. Although Houser's name is attached to the company on official records, it's unclear at this stage what it will focus on. Naturally, many will be speculating that Houser's company could be a brand new development studio, but with nothing said by the man himself as yet, these are just rumors at the moment even if they look convincing. Dan, as many already know, is something of a powerful figure in the industry given his track record. His departure from Rockstar last year caused Take-Two stocks to drop to some of its lowest prices. As well as the GTA and Red Dead franchises, Houser's time at Rockstar has yielded a lot of successful titles that he's either produced or written or both. Titles such as Max Payne and Manhunt, for which rumors of a third installment in the Horror Stalker series was leaked in 2018, have provided an outlet for Dan and his original studio's more dark side. As popular as these and other games were, the open-world franchises of Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption have become the bread and butter for Rockstar Games. Although Houser will not be around for the rumored development of Grand Theft Auto 6, whatever he has planned is going to cause a lot of the industry and surrounding communities to pay attention. As stated, no one really knows exactly what it is he's up to, but it's likely that at some point an announcement will be made and any rumors will either be confirmed or denied. Many will likely be hoping for the former. Rockstar Games is often hailed as one of the best developers in the industry, which isn't without its reasons. The studio's biggest franchises such as Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption have garnered massive critical and commercial acclaim with every release. Fans are often scouring the depths of the internet in search of clues for what the studio is on to next. Two of Rockstar Games' founding members were the Houser brothers Dan Houser and Sam Founder, the former of which departed from the studio last year. Dan Houser has recently begun a new company titled Absurd Ventures and Games, where he would be serving as the creative director for future projects. Taken purely on a surface level, the news might seem unimportant to some, but it could be a blessing for fans of the Grand Theft Auto series. Dan Houser has been an integral part of the Grand Theft Auto franchise, assuming the role of either producer and/or writer in almost every entry. While it isn't fair to credit him entirely for how great the games are, he has played a considerable role nevertheless. A lot of the personality within Rockstar's open-world games comes down to the writing, which can be subtle as seen in Grand Theft Auto 4, or mostly satirical as seen in Grand Theft Auto 5. Regardless of the game, a consistent levity can be found within the writing, which lends a unique charm to the studio's work. Dan Houser being such an integral part of this aspect carries a lot of experience and expertise, which will probably be used to great extent with his new studio Absurd Ventures and Games. While reports suggest Houser is taking up a more directorial role within the new studio, it isn't so far-fetched to imagine him taking up writing, should the occasion call for it. Grand Theft Auto, despite being incredibly popular, scratches a very particular itch that contemporaries have failed to do. Games like Mafia can take themselves too seriously, while others such as Saints Row are too self-aware to deliver a heartfelt narrative successfully. That being said, it's all the better for them since they aren't blindly following trends, but it leaves enough room for Dan Houser's studio to make a game in a similar vein to Grand Theft Auto. Of course, there's always the point of budget to consider. Making AAA games isn't cheap to any extent, and Rockstar Games' open-world titles are some of the most expensive that the medium has to offer. Games like Grand Theft Auto 5 have swaths of content and detail that took a span of several years across a number of studios to develop, and expecting something on the same scale might be a bit much. However, scale and ambition can always be pared back, and the studio could surely come up with something great along the same lines. Rumors suggest that Grand Theft Auto 6 won't release until 2025, and it will be focused on a live service model. If these rumors are indeed true, Dan Houser's studio has a great opportunity to capitalize on the void left by a purely single-player Rockstar open world. Take-Two is the parent company of Rockstar, which gives the former a lot of control over which projects are pursued in the latter's pantheon of studios. Longtime fans of the developer might remember the more experimental projects from the studios, including titles like Bully, Manhunt, Midnight Club, and many more. Many of these franchises have been extinct or put on hold for almost a decade at this point, and a lot of it can be attributed to Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption overshadowing these smaller games by boasting sales figures in tens of millions. A recent rumor pertaining to Bully 2 states how the development was canned in favor of bigger and more lucrative projects like Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption. Dan Houser didn't announce any particular reasons for his departure, but it's quite possible that it could be due to burnout on working on games within the same franchises that continue to get bigger and bigger. The sentiment is also backed by his departure taking place after an extended break that lasted 6 months. Thus, it's also plausible that his studio might work on IPs reminiscent of these forgotten franchises. Fans of games like Max Payne 3 and Bully have been clamoring for years for sequels, sadly to no avail. As mentioned before, most of these games have a unique charm that hasn't quite been replicated since. Given that Dan's absurd ventures in games is free to pursue whatever ventures they want, it might even bring back many of these experiences with new hats since rights to Rockstar Games franchises are reserved. There's some possibility of his studio developing a game for Rockstar by using these IPs, but the chances aren't worth banking on for now. Games like Control signify how middling budgets can produce great results. Remedy took its signature storytelling techniques and gameplay ideas established while working on games like Max Payne and Quantum Break and realized it to a great extent within an entirely new universe. This provides a great lesson for Dan Houser's new studio to look up to, and hopefully, fans get to see many of their favorite franchises in an entirely new light, or better yet, something completely unique. Rockstar Games' parent company, Take-Two Interactive, has been removing popular classic Grand Theft Auto mods dating back to 2005 through a series of DMCA takedowns. Many modders have been left outraged and frustrated since these purges occurred, without notice, over the course of several days. The publisher has not explained why it has started eliminating these pioneering mods, but this would not be the first time it has taken a hard stand against the GTA modding community. The publisher infamously pressured OpenIV, a popular Grand Theft Auto 5 modding program, to shut down altogether in 2017, but because of extreme backlash from the community following the removal, the publisher eventually reversed its decision and issued a new set of guidelines for modders. Although now it would appear it is repeating a similar turn of events against the modding community, as old Grand Theft Auto mods for PC have been taken down from ModDB as recently as July 17, with several prominent Vice City and San Andreas modifications being now no longer available. This was made public by several popular Grand Theft Auto 5 modders, who revealed that their work on earlier games in the series has been completely terminated, citing DMCA claims from publisher Take-Two Interactive. The full breadth of the takedowns is outlined in Twitter user Silence post, which also includes hypotheses and comments from the afflicted mod creators. Overall, these takedowns have confused many as some of these mods are over a decade old, and have existed for a very long time without any issue from Take-Two, with Rockstar Games even releasing an agreement on its website in 2017 regarding PC GTA mods, essentially affirming that mods are fine if they are non-commercial and single-player. But this does not seem to be the case, as one of the removed mods include GTA Underground, a popular free modification that allowed gamers to explore the map of Vice City to Liberty City in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, a single-player title that is currently 16 years old. There is no recent official public statement available from the publisher regarding the sudden change of heart. However, it would appear the agreement was revised in 2019, adding a caution that Take-Two Interactive can disregard the restrictions it established at any time, with no notification required. Take-Two reserves the right to object to any third-party project, or to revise, revoke or withdraw this statement at any time in their own discretion. It's unclear why Take-Two is suddenly pursuing these mods for DMCA violations, years after they were initially posted. Some speculate it may be related to the long-rumored classic GTA remakes. Others have theorized it might be the outcome of GTA 6 with a speculated 2025 release. But this is just conjecture, and as with all unverified claims, they should be taken with a hint of skepticism. ModDB's management sought to contact Take-Two to fix the dilemma. Without pulling mods, however, the company was unresponsive. For the time being, ModDB has no choice but to comply with the takedowns. Up next we have an acquisition news, as Chinese tech giant Tencent fully acquires Sumo Digital, the developer behind games like Sackboy: A Big Adventure, Crackdown 3, and Hood Outlaws and Legends. Sumo Digital, the developer behind Sackboy: A Big Adventure, started with a single studio and now has 14 other studios in 5 countries. The developer has also worked on other video games over the years, such as Crackdown 3 and Hood, Outlaws and Legends. It was recently revealed that Sumo Digital was fully acquired by the Chinese tech giant Tencent. Tencent has stakes in other companies responsible for publishing and developing well-known video games, including the popular MOBA League of Legends. The tech company previously had an 8.75% stake in Sumo Digital as its second-largest shareholder, and now Tencent will fully acquire the developer. The acquisition will also help elevate Tencent's global presence. The report stated Tencent would be buying Sumo Digital in a $1.3 billion deal. This will allow Tencent to add Sumo's titles to its growing portfolio of chart-topping video games. According to the Post, the deal will add Sumo Digital's racing and snooker games, like Hotshot Racing, to Tencent's current lineup of video games, including Call of Duty Mobile. According to the reports, Tencent's $1.3 billion deal is a 43% premium of Sumo Digital's current worth. Tencent is mainly acquiring Sumo for its experience in developing and operating AAA games and live service games, most of which were developed for clients including Sony, Microsoft, Sega, and more. Carl Cavers, the CEO of Sumo, released a statement about the acquisition. Cavers said that the acquisition will be largely beneficial for Sumo Digital, including its staff, shareholders, and clients. He mentions that Tencent has demonstrated its commitment to backing Sumo's client work, and will continue to invest in the developer. Cavers also said it will bring another dimension to Sumo and provide new opportunities that were previously out of reach for the company. Tencent will continue to support Sumo in its ongoing projects, including the work-for-hire projects, and will have a hands-off approach regarding management. Cavers stated that he and the other co-founders of Sumo, Paul Porter and Darren Mills, will continue to reprise their roles in the company. On top of that, Cavers also stated that Sumo Digital could be an invaluable addition to Tencent, which seeks to push into the AAA game space itself with its own projects. Tencent is the king in mobile gaming industry, so Sumo Digital could push mobile games further. Tencent is acquiring developers and studios rapidly these days, as they have become a mammoth of a publisher. They also said that Sumo Digital will be continuing doing those third-party partnerships, which is good as Sumo Digital is a big company with more than 800 employers. Those who think that we won't get another Sackboy. The IP is owned by PlayStation and Media Molecule is the owner of IP. So we definitely can get another Sackboy game, and also I am expecting an expanded and enhanced version of Dreams for the PlayStation 5. Since the initial announcement of Nintendo's upcoming new Switch OLED, fans and analysts have quickly begun to speculate what this could mean for the system's future. Well, following several rumors and assumptions from fans about the Switch Pro, Nintendo has come out to address the buzz and correct some claims about both this newly announced system and any ones that might be coming at a later date. The major error that Nintendo wanted to get in front of for the Switch OLED comes from a Bloomberg report that claimed that the new system would have a wider profit margin than its predecessor. This apparently ran on the assumption that the new system would cost an extra $10 per unit to manufacture and would sell for an extra $50, earning a net gain of $40 in profits per system over the original Switch. In a tweet from Nintendo's account used for reaching out to investors, the company addressed this news about the increased profit margins for the upcoming Switch OLED directly. According to Nintendo, this claim from the Bloomberg report is incorrect, implying that the increased cost in manufacturing and price at retail does not come out to the previously estimated numbers. Additionally, the gaming developer also took the time to address separate rumors about the Switch Pro that many players continue to speculate could still be coming later this year or 2022. While Nintendo didn't mention the Switch Pro model specifically, the tweet does take the time to clarify that there are no plans for launching any other models than the OLED at this time. Fans have started dividing into two camps on the exact wording of this, however, claiming that this could mean that a new model could be coming next year or not coming at all. Considering the response intended both for customers and investors, this is much more likely the last nail in the coffin for a fully upgraded Switch Pro coming anytime soon. It isn't surprising that Nintendo decided to get in front of this claim about profit margins, considering how it might look from a customer perspective to be expected to pay so much more for so little advancement. That being said, this isn't entirely common for a company that often has dozens of rumors about Switch Pros and revived franchises buzzing around among fans every day. Taking the time to address the likelihood of any other models of the developer's most popular system might also be the best decision at the moment, especially since that means fans won't be tempted to skip the Switch OLED for a more powerful console down the line. When it comes down to the Nintendo Switch itself, its power has never relied on its graphics and performance, and that's my concern. If you ask me, I want Nintendo to make a powerful console as PlayStation 5, and I want to see a Mario game at the graphical fidelity of Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and they need to make some alterations in their pricing of remasters, as most of them are just simple resolution and HD upgrades. And that's all for the video, guys. Like and share the video for a greater audience. Comment your thoughts on the topics, and if you want to contribute for the growth of the channel, the link to my PayPal in the video's description and in the channel banner. Donations are always appreciated. Thanks for watching the video, subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon, and until then from SMPV it's goodbye.